Hello and welcome back to the second part of my somewhat epic poem, a Pokeadventure, which is a poem where I take words and phrases from Pokemon and weave them into an adventure story. As I said last time, it's not my best poem. I don't even think it's that great, but it was a little challenge that I set myself. If you're watching this and getting a bit confused and you're thinking, well, actually, I don't know what he's talking about, you might want to watch the first part of a Pokeadventure, the Journey Through the Green Forest, which is on YouTube. It's also my blog, but the link to YouTube video is down below, along with links to other things like my poetry collection on Wattpad, where all my poems go. But yeah, hopefully you will enjoy that. And if you have already watched that, then welcome to the second part. I'm once again wearing my Pikachu Puma t-shirt. I'm sorry, I only have one Pokemon t-shirt. So yeah, I can't really help you on that front. Anyhow, part 2 of 4. So part 2 of a Pokeadventure is called the Yellow Bellied Cowards. So we've had green, we've had yellow. I wonder what the next 2 colours will be. Obviously, I already know, but you might be wondering. Anyway, let's get on with the poem. So, last time we left our intrepid heroes in the forest. One of them had slid down and he'd got his foot caught in the mud. He'd got a bramble in his arm. A bramblin. That's a Pokemon, bramblin. And then some cat-like creatures had come towards him. And then he'd heard a screech. And we didn't know what that screech was. So, here we go. Remember, listen out for those Pokemon words. Okay, might be better reading this one. Because you can see highlighted the words. But anyway, here is part 2, a Pokeadventure part 2, the Yellow-Bellied Cowards attack. As the creatures turned and fled, I glanced nervously to my side. There stood Misty, smirking at me. I knew not how she had made the sound and did not ask. I was just happy that she had shown such bravery. She noticed my foot, and despite the dirt and ground, quickly freed it. We knew we had to move before the beast returned, but we're no longer on a path. Misty took the lead and pushed foliage out of the way, moving forward with speed. Then we saw it from a distance, another cat-like creature. Light brown with darker stripes than the others, it crawled on all fours. It was like a tiger, but with one great tusk protruding from its mouth. Before we realised, the beast was among us. Its claws out, shocking us with a quick attack. We dodged and weaved, somehow managing to repel the attack. This was the mother, the Ultra Beast, and she was in a rage. All we could do was charge as fast as we could. The sound of our breath in our ears and our bodies dancing to the drum beating of our hearts, we continued moving. Only when we realised the creature no longer followed did we stop. Catching our breath, we paused only to take a drink of fresh water from our bottles. We thought the creature must be the beast we were told about. Our bodies shook with excitement at the thought of treasure, but when we moved through some trees, all we saw was a dilapidated building. The house was falling apart, plaster and wood hanging off it. I did not want to go in, but Misty told me I must. This is where the item we needed was. As I stepped inside, it felt like the house was haunted by a poltergeist. It really was ghastly in this place. I felt the hairs stand up on the back of my neck. Such was the terror I had for the place. Misty, however, did not seem to be bothered by it. She walked across the entrance room and opened a door to her right. After a quick glance around, she closed the door and entered a room to the left. A few seconds later, she beckoned me over, pointing into the room. I tentatively edged over and looked in. This room was more run down than the one we entered. Chairs and tables had been toppled over. A bookshelf leaned against a wall, looking sorry for itself. And everything was covered in thick fluff as if a dust storm had passed through. I almost missed it at first, but then realised there was a little clay doll sitting on the floor. Is this what we came for? I asked. I suppose so, Misty replied, looking unsure. Shall we grab it then? I asked. Yeah, Misty replied, but then paused. I could see her hand shaking. I knew it was my turn to step forward, so said, I can do this if you want. Misty just nodded, never taking her eyes from the small figure. If it has to be one of us, I choose you. Not wanting to stay in the room or even the house any longer than required, I made a quick dash being as nimble as I could, grabbed the door and got out. Neither me or Misty needed to look at each other, instead making a headlong rush for the exit. Once outside, we looked to one another, unsure what to do next. "Where now?" I asked with a shrug. Misty raised the flute. "I suppose we should use this." Placing the clay doll on the floor, we stepped back. Misty raised the flute to her mouth and blew. Though how to play the instrument was unknown to her, it was not music that came from the flute, but some singing with an alluring voice. Suddenly an eerie spell came over the forest, and trees seemed to sway and bend. The song appeared to revive the little figurine, and it began to awaken. Misty pulled the flute from her mouth, but a chatter had appeared in our heads. Lots of voices talking at once, leaving us confused. A second later, the clay doll sat down again, motionless as if it had just fainted. Misty and myself looked to each other. We did not feel any different, but somehow knew where to go. We understood the direction to walk in, the place where the treasure would be. At that point, we knew we had to do this together, as if we had a destiny bond. "Let's go," Misty said, nodding. As she turned to leave, I followed her. We managed to work our way between trees for a few hundred meters, but then the path was blocked by great vines with spikes sticking from them. They looked like large iron thorns, and we were unsure how to move them. No matter how hard we pulled at the stems, nothing would budge. Standing back, a thought ran through both our minds. The power of the clay doll urged us on. We decided to hold hands, then each placed a palm on the vines, imagining an opening as if we created it in our minds. Suddenly, large buds pushed through the massive growth, then blossomed into great white flowers. As the flowers grew, the vines parted to leave a gateway for us to walk through. We were thankful we'd bumped into that old man, or our adventure would already be at an end. As if to welcome our arrival, something rang loudly. We looked up and noticed a bell sprouted from above the newly created archway. Holding hands once more, we walked through the archway under the victory bell, then into a garden bathed in sunlight and full of beautiful flowers. The garden was slightly sunken, and at the end stood a statue. It was not made of stone, as we expected, but was a great iron moth with an iron crown on its head. Inlaid into the plinth it sat on were an array of iron leaves. We realised that it was not the cat we expected before, but this creature that had the treasure. As we walked down stone steps into the main garden, trepidation took over once more. We felt the tiny pebbles on the path that cut the garden into 4 sections crunch under our feet. But before we reached the moth in the middle of the garden, we heard a strange noise. It felt happy, but also angry, like some dragon cheer. We turned to see a mass of men and women, all in leather clothes and bandanas. Pirates. It was clear they had detected what we were going to do and had the foresight to follow behind us. In front of the others stood an older man in a tricorn hat and large black coat. As he smiled, I realised who it was. He noticed this and said, "Yep, it's me, your old friend who gifted you the flute. I suppose I should introduce myself properly. My real name is Aaron, and I have tried to get that clay figure to awaken for many years but failed. But now you have done the job for me, and I thank you for that. Take them away." Misty and myself knew it would be futile to run, so just waited for the pirates to take us. The one who grabbed me had a vice grip, whilst the one who got Misty clamped her mouth closed. We watched the forest go past as the pirates made us bounce up and down on their shoulders. Branches hit us as we moved through the foliage. At one point, a vine whipped in my face. Soon enough, we had reached the beach, and they dropped us. Sand slashed into my face, but I quickly composed myself. As I looked up, I saw the pirates pulling a small wooden boat out to sea. Further on from this, bobbing in the bay, was a great galleon. It was then that I saw Misty run, making a dash up the beach towards the tree line. 2 pirates noticed her move and stormed up after her. She was almost off the beach when one of the pirates slid and aimed a low kick at her. I watched Misty fly through the air and crash to the ground. The 2 pirates were on her, pulling a rope from somewhere I did not see. They twisted their rope around to bind her and dragged her back down the beach into the small wooden boat. As I watched her move past, 2 more pirates grasped me, and hauled me to my feet. It was not long before we sat in the boat, bobbing up and down and riding the surf as we headed to the main ship. We thought we might topple over as we saw a big wave crash into the hull, but we rode it and carried on. Misty tried to struggle out of her binds, but wasn't able to. I simply sat there and waited. When we reached the galleon, we were told to climb a rope ladder onto the deck. I managed to get up unaided, but Misty had to be carried on one of the pirates' backs. The deck was awash with activity. People cleaning, fixing weaponry and readying sails. Everyone knew their jobs, as if they were part of a hive mind. We were quickly ushered down a hatch and marched along a corridor. A small wooden door was unlocked and we were thrown in with a seismic toss. After picking ourselves up, we looked around the small cabin. There was little in the way of furniture, just a few sheets on the ground and a bucket to relieve ourselves in. It was then we noticed a frail old man in the corner. He nodded to us and asked, "How did you get thrown in here?" "We were caught by the pirates," Misty said. "Ditto," he replied. "So how do we get out of here?" I asked. "I've been trying for years," the old man replied. "There is no escape." Just then something brushed past my leg and made me jump. I looked down and saw a large fluffy white cat. It was so beautiful. It had to be a Persian. I bent down and stroked it. The cat made a strange mew sound, but seemed to be happy. Misty stroked the cat as well. It made a mew too for her. "Oh," the old man said, "I see you've met Skitty, the ship's cat. She comes and goes as she pleases." "If she comes in and out of this room when it's locked," I said and turned to Misty. Together we added, "There must be a way out." Realising we had said this at the same time, I added, "Jinx." Without talking, both Misty and myself searched the room, looking for any openings. After a while, Misty called over, bent back slightly. It was a scraggy piece of wood. That was where Skitty got in and out. Maybe we could rip it off and make ourselves a larger opening. Grasping the edge of the wood, I pulled with all my strength, but could not move the plank. Misty tried too, but all her muscle was not enough. If we wanted to make the gap bigger, we would have to bulk up. But how long would that take? We could only do press-ups and sit-ups. No gym equipment here. And there we go. That's the end of part 2. Sorry if I stuttered on a few bits. I think it's a bit of a longer part, probably the longest part of the whole poem. As you can see, I have reused some of the Pokemon words as well. But yeah, hopefully you're enjoying it and you're enjoying the adventure and the excitement. Maybe not the way it's written. I've had to write it in a way to shoehorn in those Pokemon words. But for now, yeah, hopefully you enjoy it. And if you do, you can like and subscribe, and you can look at my blog and you can see more of my writing that way. And gear yourself up for part 3, okay? Remember what I said, is it going to be blue or is it going to be red? And what's going to happen to our heroes that are locked inside the pirate's hold? We'll have to wait for next time. Bye.